investigators to find Nancy first. It does not require a confession. It does not require a body. It does not require surveillance, a tip, a witness, or anyone making a careless mistake. It requires only one thing from the person on the other side of those ransom emails, that when the payment they have been demanding finally arrives, they take it. Because the moment they do, everything changes. The moment that Bitcoin moves, a trail opens. A trail that is permanent, internationally visible, federally trackable. A trail that a former special agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation says leads in sequence to an identification, an arrest, and a federal prosecution, regardless of what the sender does or does not know about what happened to Nancy Guthrie. We are going to walk through all of it in this video: the sender, the demand, the timeline of contacts, the mechanics of the trail, the legal exposure the sender has already created for themselves, an exposure they may not fully understand. And then, in the final third of this video, we are going to tell you the name of the tactic the former agent is describing, because it has a specific name. A name that comes from federal law enforcement history. And when you hear it, the entire framework we have been building locks into place and makes complete sense. Stay with us. Everything you are about to hear is grounded in confirmed, publicly available facts and named, on-record expert statements. Where something reflects expert opinion, we will tell you. Where something is analytical inference, we will label it explicitly. We do not speculate and call it confirmation. We do not guess and present it as fact. That distinction matters here. It will be clear throughout. Let us start where the public record starts. Let us start with Harvey Levin. Harvey Levin is the founder of TMZ. If you have been following this case, and you have, because you are here, you know that TMZ has been one of the primary outlets breaking news on the ransom note dimension of the Nancy Guthrie investigation. And Levin himself, not a spokesperson, not a byline reporter, but Harvey Levin personally, publicly, on the record, confirmed specific details about what has been happening behind the scenes of this case since February. Here is what Harvey Levin confirmed. Someone has been contacting TMZ about the Nancy Guthrie disappearance since the earliest weeks after she went missing. Not once, not twice, more than half a dozen times. 6 separate contacts at minimum, potentially more, from the same direction, making the same type of demand across a span of weeks. While the ground investigation was active, while searches were being conducted, while Nancy's family was waiting for answers, the demand itself, cryptocurrency, specifically half a Bitcoin. The sender specified a Bitcoin wallet address. They wanted that amount deposited into that account. In exchange, the implication of information relating to Nancy's location. TMZ also confirmed the response side of that demand. No money was ever deposited. The Bitcoin wallet associated with the ransom contacts sits empty. Not a single transaction. Not a partial payment. Not a test deposit. Nothing. The account is as empty today as it was when the first contact arrived. Now hold those facts in context, because context transforms what they mean. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She is the mother of Savannah Guthrie, co-host of NBC's Today Show. She was reported missing on February 1, 2026, from Tucson, Arizona. Within days, her disappearance had national cable news coverage. Within weeks, it had generated an extraordinary volume of investigative content, expert commentary, community analysis, and public engagement across every platform that exists. The Pima County Sheriff's Department, under Sheriff Chris Nanos, is leading the ground investigation. The FBI joined the case, confirmed and on record, as the profile and potential scope of the disappearance warranted federal resources and federal jurisdiction. Both agencies are active. Both agencies are working this case. And while all of that has been happening, while investigators were executing search operations, processing evidence, following investigative threads, someone was composing emails to TMZ. More than 6 times. Demanding half a Bitcoin. And then doing it again and again. Think about the timeline embedded in that pattern. More than half a dozen separate contacts across weeks of an active federal investigation. That is not a single impulsive act from someone who panicked or saw an opportunity in a moment. That is sustained behavior. That is someone who keeps choosing to make contact. Someone who keeps expecting the demand will eventually be met. Or someone driven to keep inserting themselves into this story by a motivation that runs deeper than just the money. That pattern, the repetition, the persistence, the return, is what makes this thread investigatively significant. And it is precisely that pattern that a former FBI special agent says creates a specific, exploitable opportunity. An opportunity that is sitting unused while the Bitcoin wallet stays empty. Harvey Levine confirmed the contacts. Harvey Levine confirmed the demand. TMZ confirmed no payment has been made. Those are the facts, named sources, on record. That is the foundation for everything that follows. Who is sending these notes? That is the question at the center of this analysis. And the honest answer, based on everything that is publicly confirmed, is that we do not know. Nobody, outside of active federal law enforcement, has confirmed the sender's identity. Nobody has been publicly named in connection with these ransom contacts. What we do have is a behavioral profile. And in law enforcement analysis, behavior is its own category of evidence. The sender has contacted a major national media outlet about an active federal missing person investigation. They made a specific, quantified monetary demand in a defined cryptocurrency amount with a specific wallet address. They made that demand repeatedly across multiple separate contacts. They were not deterred by the absence of any response. They did not escalate to explicit violence or overt physical threats. And they have not, to any publicly confirmed degree, provided any verifiable information about Nancy's actual location. Not a detail. Not a coordinate. Not a single piece of physical evidence that could be checked. That behavioral profile is a dataset. Even without a name, it tells you something about who this person is and how they are operating. In missing person cases that achieve saturation, cases that run across cable news, across YouTube, across every social platform for weeks, a specific category of contact becomes statistically predictable. Individuals who have been consuming the coverage decide, for various reasons, to try to insert themselves into the narrative. Sometimes they genuinely believe they have real information. Sometimes they are constructing a fabrication from whole cloth. Sometimes they have heard something secondhand, a fragment, a piece of context, and are trying to monetize proximity to that fragment without actually knowing how accurate it is. And sometimes, often, in the statistical experience of law enforcement investigators who have handled these situations, they have nothing at all. They have read the same news coverage you have. They have watched the same videos. They absorbed the case through public channels and decided to see whether a family's desperation or the media's attention could be converted into value for themselves. Jennifer Kidnapper knows this. She is a former FBI special agent who has been among the most active and visible expert voices on the Nancy Guthrie case across multiple media platforms. She is not a peripheral commentator. She has been consistently present in the analysis of this investigation, offering insight on investigative timelines, on the role of federal law enforcement, and on specific evidentiary and tactical questions as they have surfaced. She told Newsweek directly, she does not believe the ransom note sender necessarily has real information about where Nancy is. Pause on that. Let it land. A former FBI special agent, with a career built on evaluating exactly these kinds of situations, looked at the confirmed facts about these ransom contacts and concluded, this person probably does not know where Nancy is. And then she said, we should still find out who they are. Right now, that is the move worth understanding deeply. Because her recommendation is not contingent on whether the sender has useful information about Nancy's location. The recommendation exists in a completely different frame. It is about the fact that what the sender has done, regardless of what they know, has created a specific legal exposure for them. An exposure that federal law enforcement has tools to exploit. Tools that can produce an identification. And through that identification, a federal prosecution. The possibility space here is wider than the binary of sender knows everything versus sender knows nothing. Consider the gradations. Someone who heard something from someone else. Someone present in a context that gave them partial indirect knowledge. Someone with a connection, however tangential, to a person of interest in the case, trying to monetize that proximity. Someone who was told something in passing, perhaps without fully understanding what they were told, and saw an opportunity. Any one of those possibilities becomes investigatively significant the moment the sender is identified. And right now the sender is not identified, at least not in any publicly confirmed way. Kidnapper wants to change that. She has named the tool. She has explained the mechanics. And the wallet is still empty. Before we walk through the mechanics of the recommended strategy, let us spend a moment on the source. Because credentials matter, when we are talking about applying specific federal investigative tactics to an active missing person case. Jennifer Kidnapper is a former special agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. She brings to her public analysis a direct, career-level understanding of how federal investigations are structured, how missing person cases operate at the federal level, how evidence is built and evaluated, and how law enforcement approaches situations where a key actor is unknown. She is not an armchair commentator. She is not an enthusiast with a YouTube channel. She is someone who worked inside the institution she is now describing, and who brings that interior knowledge to her public statements. Her recommendation to Newsweek about the ransom note situation has two components that work together. First, the tactical action. Send the Bitcoin. Make the deposit. Give the sender exactly what they have been demanding. Second, the strategic observation. Watch what happens next. Because what happens next, on the blockchain, is itself the investigation. Now let us talk about Bitcoin, and why the recommendation functions the way Kidnapper says it does. Bitcoin is regularly described in popular culture as anonymous currency. It was the payment method of choice for dark web marketplaces. Ransomware attackers have demanded it for years. The cultural reputation is of a currency that shields the identity of the people using it. That reputation is dramatically overstated in the modern federal investigative environment. Law enforcement has been exploiting the gap between Bitcoin's reputation and its actual forensic traceability for over a decade. Here is the foundational structure you need to understand. Bitcoin operates on a blockchain, a decentralized, publicly distributed ledger that records every transaction ever made on the network. Every single one, permanently. The ledger cannot be altered after the fact. It is not stored in any one place. It is maintained simultaneously across thousands of nodes in dozens of countries. It is, in a meaningful sense, indestructible as a record. When Bitcoin moves from one wallet to another, that movement is recorded. Every transaction has a timestamp, a sending address, a receiving address, and an amount. These records are public. They are queryable. If you know the wallet address of the ransom sender, and TMZ does, because they were given it, you can observe every transaction that ever occurs on that wallet in real time, without any special access. It is simply there on the public ledger, for anyone who knows how to look. The anonymity that Bitcoin actually provides is narrow. It exists at the wallet creation level. Creating a Bitcoin wallet does not require a name, a government-issued ID, or any form of identity verification. A wallet is just a cryptographic key pair, a string of characters with no identity attached to it by default. And as long as the Bitcoin in that wallet never moves toward any system that requires identity, the anonymity can technically be maintained. But the moment it moves toward utility, the moment the sender tries to actually use the money they have been demanding, that is when the wall appears. Kidnapper put it on record to Newsweek in 11 words. Do they take it? Do they convert it to pesos? It is internationally tracked. That sentence is the entire mechanism compressed into one line. Pesos. Dollars. Euros. Any currency. Any conversion from Bitcoin into spendable money passes through a regulated exchange. And regulated exchanges, operating under federal and international compliance requirements, collect and maintain identity records. Those records are available to law enforcement through lawful process. The trail does not require the sender to be careless. It does not require them to make a mistake. It only requires them to do the thing they said they wanted to do. Take the money. Let us go further into the mechanics, because the full picture of how blockchain tracking works in practice is more comprehensive and more decisive than most people realize. Modern blockchain analytics is not an emerging capability. It is established federal infrastructure. Companies specializing in cryptocurrency forensics, Chainalysis is one of the most widely documented, have built software systems that track Bitcoin across hundreds of thousands of wallets simultaneously, mapping transaction flows, flagging fund movements, and identifying the moment funds associated with a specific event reach any point in the financial system that requires identity verification. Federal law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, have working relationships with these analytics firms that are documented in court records and federal procurement databases. Cases have been prosecuted. Significant cryptocurrency seizures have been executed. Convictions have followed. The technology works. It has a record. Here is what that means in concrete terms for the ransom note sender. The sender has provided a Bitcoin wallet address. That address is known to TMZ. It is presumably known to the FBI. And it is on the blockchain, which means it is publicly observable by anyone who chooses to monitor it. If the recommended strategy is deployed, if a Bitcoin deposit is made to that wallet, several things happen in sequence. The deposit is recorded on the blockchain immediately and permanently. This is automatic, not a decision anyone makes, not something that can be intercepted or prevented. The transaction exists on the public ledger the moment it is confirmed by the network. The sender can see it. Law enforcement can see it. Any analytics platform monitoring that wallet can see it. The act of making the deposit is a communication to the sender. The money is here. Come and get it. Now the sender faces a decision. And this is where the architecture of the situation becomes decisive. If the sender does nothing, if they leave the Bitcoin in the wallet without moving it, they have still confirmed something of investigative value. They have confirmed the wallet is actively monitored and that they are aware the payment arrived. That is information. And crucially, the funds are sitting in a known, monitored wallet on a public blockchain. They are not going anywhere. They can be tracked the moment they move, whether that is tomorrow or 6 months from now. If the sender moves the Bitcoin, which they almost certainly intend to do, because people who demand specific amounts of money for a purpose intend to use it, every step of that movement is recorded on the permanent public ledger. If it goes to a second wallet, recorded. A third. A fourth. A fifth. Every hop is logged. Every intermediate address is known. Blockchain analytics software does not lose the trail. Funds can move through dozens of intermediate wallets, and the chain of transactions remains intact and followable. At some point, because the sender is a human being who presumably wants to convert this into something they can spend, the Bitcoin approaches an exchange. Whatever exchange they use, wherever it is located geographically, if it operates under any meaningful regulatory framework, it has Know Your Customer procedures. It has identity records. A name, a government-issued ID, possibly a bank account, possibly a physical address. Law enforcement serves legal process on that exchange. The exchange produces the records. A name appears. The international dimension of Kidnapper's statement, it's internationally tracked, is significant and not rhetorical. If the sender is outside the United States, the trail does not end at a border. International mutual legal assistance treaties, law enforcement cooperation frameworks, and the globally distributed nature of the blockchain itself mean the trail is followable across jurisdictions. The Bitcoin does not respect borders. The ledger that records its movement does not respect borders. And the legal mechanisms available to federal investigators extend across borders in ways that make geographic distance far less of a protection than the sender might believe. The sender created a wallet. They provided that address. They demanded a deposit. The deposit, if made, creates the trail. The trail leads to an identity. That is the sequence Jennifer Kidnapper is describing. Here is the legal reality that has been sitting quietly beneath every conversation about these ransom notes since February. It needs to be stated plainly. The person who has been sending ransom contacts to TMZ, whoever they are, has committed a federal crime. Not arguable. Not theoretical. Based on the confirmed, publicly reported facts, the conduct described falls squarely within established federal law. Federal extortion statutes, specifically 18 U.S.C. Section 875, which addresses interstate threats and communications, make it a federal crime to transmit in interstate commerce any communication that demands money or other value while making threats or demands connected to a person's welfare or safety. Email is interstate commerce under the statute. Cryptocurrency is value under the statute. More than half a dozen such communications across weeks of an active federal investigation is a sustained course of conduct, not an isolated incident. Here is the critical part. The statute does not require that the person making the demand have any actual ability to deliver on whatever implied promise the demand represents. It does not require that they have real information about Nancy's location. It does not require that any harm was actually going to occur if the demand was not met. The criminal conduct is complete at the moment the demand is transmitted, 6 times over. The penalties are substantial. A conviction can mean years in federal prison. And the prosecutorial interest in pursuing charges against someone who ran an extortion campaign targeting a high-profile active federal missing person case, the mother of a nationally known media figure, would be real. Here is the part that connects directly to Kidnapper's recommendation. The sender does not need to have any connection whatsoever to what actually happened to Nancy Guthrie in order to have committed serious federal crimes. They could be thousands of miles from Tucson. They could have no first-hand knowledge of anything relevant to the investigation. They could have learned about this case entirely from news coverage, composed ransom demands, and sent them to TMZ repeatedly, and that conduct alone, standing entirely on its own, supports federal prosecution. This is why Kidnapper's position is so coherent and so precise. She is not recommending the Bitcoin payment because she believes the sender has information that will crack the case. She is recommending it because the Bitcoin payment is the fastest, most reliable mechanism available to identify who committed federal crimes against this investigation. Identifying that person, prosecuting those crimes, that is a legitimate, significant law enforcement outcome, completely independent of anything else that happens in the search for Nancy. The sender may believe that anonymous cryptocurrency combined with anonymous email gave them a protective shell. That belief, if they hold it, fundamentally underestimates how blockchain forensics work in the modern federal investigative environment. The shell is not as solid as they think, and the act of accepting the payment they demanded would be the moment that shell cracks open. There is one more dimension worth considering. When someone faces federal extortion charges, when they are looking at real prison time, cooperation becomes a meaningful option. If the sender has any information at all, any fragment, any secondhand knowledge, any peripheral awareness of something relevant to Nancy's disappearance, that information surfaces in a cooperation context. Catching the extortionist does not foreclose other investigative paths. It opens them. We are about to get to the name. The specific tactic. The term Jennifer Kidnapper used, on record, by name, that locks the entire framework together. But before we get there, if this case matters to you, and clearly it does, because you have stayed this long, please take a second right now and subscribe to this channel. This community is how cases like Nancy's stay alive. It is how the questions stay loud. It is how we keep each other informed when something breaks. Hit subscribe. It costs you nothing. And it keeps this work going. Now, the name. We told you at the beginning of this video that there was a name, that it would come in the final third, that when you heard it, the framework we had been building would lock into place. The name is Tickle the Wire. Tickle the Wire is a law enforcement strategy. It has a documented history in federal law enforcement practice. It is most closely associated in its origins with wiretap operations, situations where investigators have a monitored communication channel, but the subject has gone quiet. The subject has stopped talking, stopped using the monitored line, and waiting for them to speak again could take indefinitely. So investigators take a deliberate action. A calculated move designed to give the subject a reason to use the channel they are watching. A reason to talk. A reason to act. You create a stimulus on the wire. You give the subject something to respond to. And in responding, in doing what they naturally do when the thing they are watching changes, they reveal themselves. That is tickling the wire. You make something happen on the line you are monitoring. Then you capture what happens next. Jennifer Kidnapper named this tactic by name, Tickle the Wire, explicitly, in her statement to Newsweek, and she applied it directly and specifically to the situation in Nancy Guthrie's case. She said, "This is the mechanism. This is what should be done. Use it." In the context of the ransom notes, the wire is the blockchain. The monitored channel is the Bitcoin wallet address the sender provided to TMZ. And the tickle, the deliberate, calculated provocation, is the half Bitcoin deposit. You put the money in the wallet. You give the sender exactly what they asked for. And then you watch what happens on the wire. Because the blockchain is the wire, it is permanently and globally observable. Law enforcement, equipped with the analytics infrastructure built specifically to trace cryptocurrency, infrastructure that has been used to build and win federal cases, can follow everything that happens on that blockchain with a precision that is difficult to fully appreciate until you understand how the technology actually works. The name Tickle the Wire is not loosely applied here. It is the precise federal law enforcement concept, at work. You create a condition that gives the subject a reason to act. You monitor the channel their action will occur on. And when they act, they hand you the trail you need. Kidnapper's use of this specific term carries something beyond just the tactical instruction. It signals that she views the ransom note situation as a tractable, solvable, investigative problem. Not an intractable mystery. It is not. We do not know who is doing this, and we have no way to find out. It is. We have a specific, named, tested mechanism that can identify this person. And it should be deployed. The tactic has a name. The mechanism is understood. The wallet address is known. The sender has established a pattern of contact that confirms they are monitoring this situation closely. Everything required to execute the strategy is in place. And the wallet is still empty. The ransom note situation does not exist in isolation. It is one thread, and an unusual, specific thread, within an investigation that has been running for more than 2 months without a publicly confirmed resolution. Nancy Guthrie was reported missing February 1, 2026 from Tucson, Arizona. She was 84 years old. She is the mother of Savannah Guthrie, co-host of The Today Show on NBC. That combination, her age, her location, her family's public profile, drove national media coverage almost immediately. The Pima County Sheriff's Department, under Sheriff Chris Nanos, launched a search and investigation that scaled rapidly. The FBI joined the case, confirmed and public, reflecting both the national profile and the potential federal dimensions of the disappearance. What has followed across 2+ months is an investigation with significant evidentiary threads that have each generated substantial public and expert attention. DNA evidence questions. The backdoor theory. Contractor investigation threads. Flowerpot forensics. Neighborhood staging analysis. Expert commentary from retired federal agents, behavioral analysts, and forensic specialists across every platform. This channel has covered multiple arcs of that investigation in detail. And yet, no public resolution. Nancy has not been found. No arrest has been publicly announced. The core question, what happened to Nancy Guthrie and where is she, remains unanswered. In that environment, in a case where every thread has been scrutinized and parsed across hundreds of hours of content and thousands of community conversations, the ransom note thread stands out for one specific and important reason. It is the only thread in which someone claiming to have information has made active, repeated, sustained contact with an identifiable point of contact and made a specific demand in return for that information. Every other investigative thread works outward from physical evidence, witness accounts, behavioral analysis, geographic search parameters, forensic interpretation. Investigators are reading things, objects, locations, data points. The ransom note thread is different in kind. It involves a person who is actively choosing to communicate, choosing to stay in contact, choosing to come back 6 times and make the same demand. That is a human being making deliberate decisions. And human beings who make deliberate decisions leave trails that humans trained to follow those trails can exploit. The thread also matters for a reason that exists entirely apart from whether the sender knows anything useful. As we have established, both through Kidnapper's own assessment and through the legal framework, this person has committed federal crimes. They have run an extortion campaign against an active federal investigation. That alone is worth the investigative resources to address. That alone justifies the tactic. 2 months is a long time in a missing person case. Every day without resolution carries its own weight for Nancy's family, for the investigators working this, and for the community that has stayed engaged because they believe answers are owed. The ransom note sender has been a presence throughout those 2 months. They have not disappeared. They have not stopped. They keep choosing to come back. Tickle the wire. Jennifer Kidnapper says, end the anonymity. Find out who is on the other side of those emails. Because, whatever the answer turns out to be, it is more than what an empty Bitcoin wallet is currently telling anyone. Here is something that deserves to be stated directly, without softening it. Harvey Levin confirmed on record that no money has been deposited into the Bitcoin wallet associated with the ransom demands. The wallet is empty. The tactic Jennifer Kidnapper, described by name, on record, with a specific rationale, has not been deployed in any way visible from outside the investigation. We do not know what conversations have happened internally at the FBI about whether to pursue this approach. We do not know whether the strategy has been considered and set aside for reasons that have not been made public. We do not know whether legal constraints, strategic sequencing, or investigative priorities have shaped a decision to leave that wallet empty. We are not in a position to evaluate those internal decisions because we do not have access to the information that would inform them. We want to be clear about that distinction. A named former FBI special agent publicly recommended a specific named federal tactic in connection with this case. She explained the mechanism. She explained the rationale. She explained why the outcome is valuable regardless of what the sender knows. The Bitcoin account, publicly confirmed by TMZ, is empty. More than half a dozen contacts have been made. The sender is unidentified in any public confirmation. That gap is a legitimate subject for public scrutiny, not accusation, not conspiracy theorizing. Public scrutiny of the kind that asks simply and directly, is every available tool being used in this investigation? Is the ransom note dimension being treated with the same urgency as every other thread? Has the FBI considered what a former special agent is publicly recommending? This community's engagement with this case is not incidental. In documented cases, sustained public attention on missing person investigations has made real differences in resource allocation, in investigative prioritization, in the willingness of witnesses or adjacent parties to come forward. The community around this case has been loud, consistent, and genuinely engaged. Asking whether Tickle the Wire has been considered is a legitimate question. Asking why the wallet is empty is a legitimate question. Asking whether the FBI has a visible strategy for the ransom note sender is a legitimate question. Ask them. Keep asking them. Ask them loudly enough that the weight of that question is felt by the people who have the answers. Because the answers matter, not just for the federal extortion case the sender has built against themselves, but because this is one of the few threads in this investigation where a human being on the other end is making deliberate choices. And deliberate choices, in the hands of trained investigators with the right tools, can be followed somewhere. Investigators pursuing cooperation from a federal defendant have access to information that did not exist before the identification was made. The tactic does not promise a resolution to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. Nothing in responsible analysis promises that. But it closes an open loop. It identifies an unknown actor who has been operating anonymously inside an active federal case for more than 2 months. It either connects to something larger, or it convicts someone of federal crimes they have already committed. Both outcomes serve the investigation. Both outcomes serve the case. Both outcomes serve the truth. Jennifer Kidnapper has named the tool. The mechanism is there. The wallet is waiting. The question is whether someone is going to walk through that door. The tactic is called Tickle the Wire. A former FBI special agent went on record with Newsweek and said it should be used in Nancy's case right now. She named the tactic. She explained the blockchain mechanics. She explained why an identification is valuable, regardless of what the sender knows. The Bitcoin account, the sender specified, sits empty. More than half a dozen ransom contacts since February. No publicly confirmed identification. The wire has not been tickled. We will be here for every development in this case. Every confirmed fact from a named source. Every expert statement worth examining. Every thread that deserves to be pulled. And we will always be clear about what is confirmed, what is analysis, and what is a question that has not yet been answered. If this case matters to you, and it does, because you are still here, please subscribe to this channel. This community is what keeps cases like Nancy's alive in the public conversation. It is what ensures the questions stay loud. It is what makes certain that when something finally breaks, we are all watching. We all understand what it means, and we can hold those responsible accountable. Subscribe. Leave a comment. Tell us what you think about the Tickle the Wire recommendation. Tell us whether you believe that